The After Darks version of Field of 12 college football. George Whitfield, surrounded by the best crew you're going to find on any podcast or show anywhere, talking college football. Prodigal son of Oklahoma and Texas A&M, Trevor Knight. Favorite son of We Are Penn State and the Baylor Bear himself, Bryce Petty. Fellas, let's roll on into it. We're already watching. We are now in playoff mode. It's playoff mode. So we're already watching, just like the fans out there, Oregon and Washington. Oregon is trying to take care of business. They just about have it done, but they still have a long road ahead of them. Bryce Petty, are you impressed / do you see a path for the Oregon Ducks to make it on into the playoff?
I mean, shit, they're number 4 right now. And we just had Michigan State lose today, right? Oregon kind of controls their own destiny. I think, the Pac-12 North, they've got really Washington State and Oregon State coming up, as well as Utah. They went out those games. It's pretty much Pac-12 is a lock. And because the committee already sees them as one of the top 4 to make it in, I think that they have what it takes. So, and it's not, look, there is a rivalry, I think, with Washington, but, rainy game, get it done, just get on the next game. And I think they're in easy.
Christian Hackenberg, is Oregon one of the 4 best teams? So say they win it out and everybody that's in contention runs out the rest of the season. Say the top 8 teams from wherever they are run it out. And obviously, I don't think that's like even possible with Oklahoma, Georgia, et cetera. If Oregon runs their table, is their body of work strong enough to make a claim for one of those 4 spots?
I don't think that it is, or it's going to be, just due to the fact of what you just mentioned, that a lot of these teams still have some pretty marquee games and some statement games and the ability to play themselves in. I think Oregon's play themselves in ability has kind of tapped out. So the only thing they can do is take care of what they have control over, and that's winning the Pac-12 and finishing the season strong and seeing how the committee views that. But when you look at
who do you have jumping them?
Well, can you hold your trigger finger discipline and wait till the end of this? I mean, gosh, dude.
Who do you have jumping them?
Friggin' BRYCE. Damn.
Yeah, I agree.
Leave your emotion at the door.
Damn Wyatt Earp down there.
Wait, Hack.
What I was gonna get. I'm not gonna go into it, George. Trust me, I'm not gonna go into it.
Okay.
But I'm gonna save that. But what I am gonna say is
Wyatt Earp.
Yeah, dude. What I am gonna say is you have Georgia and Alabama are inevitably gonna play each other as long as nothing crazy happens in the SEC championship game. I think that plays an interesting role in how things work. And again, we'll get into that. And then when you look at Michigan, Ohio State, they still play each other. Both of them, Ohio State still has Michigan State. Michigan still has Penn State. So there's a lot of things that go into it. Obviously, Michigan State losing today doesn't help them a whole lot. But I think that my point being is I don't think Oregon has anything that's going to make or break them. They have to finish out strong, and then we'll see what happens with everybody else in terms of their ability to make their case. They have stronger opportunities ahead of them.
Trevor Knight, the Ducks, if the Ducks run it from here with a win at Ohio State, I don't know if there's a bigger win so far this season, and the Cincinnati Bearcats run it out. Because, I mean, the game's the game. They're going to wrap this up. Solid game. No drama. If you're a committee member, how do you look at that? The Bearcats undefeated versus the Ducks. The Ducks fell off the track one weekend versus Stanford, who got blown out today versus Utah, 52-7. But if you weigh the two, Oregon's played more heavyweights than Cincinnati has played. But Cincinnati is the one that's undefeated. How do you do all that math?
think there's a lot to still unfold. That the part that scares me about Oregon is that on this show, and I think everybody in the country wrote off the Pac-12, right? I mean, there's no way anybody from the Pac-12 gets in. Yeah, Oregon's a good team, but they had that horrific loss to Stanford. Let's forget about the Pac-12 and move on to the conferences that really matter. And then boom, first playoff ranking comes out and Oregon gets the respect at number 4. Now, because they will run the table, I believe, right? I think we all agree there. Now you've got to demote them from the top 4, and that's going to be hard to swallow for those prideful committee members that we don't know, right? Who are those people? Nobody knows who they are, if they ever even played football, but they're going to have to swallow their pride. That being said, while Oregon's out on the West Coast playing after dark and, winning their games, they're not going to be winning any big games. Some of these other teams will be winning marquee games on these backloaded schedules. And I think it poses an opportunity for them to jump. Cincinnati didn't help themselves out today, struggling over Tulsa. So I don't personally think Cincinnati's going to get in there, even as an undefeated team. There's going to be other teams coming from the back with those marquee wins in the back half of this schedule.
I agree. To me, I don't know. I can't even reconcile how I feel, how it's all set up. Cincinnati has to go play ball. They're going to get people's best shot. They won today, but it felt like a loss. They're in there, all the drama in the world, fighting to keep Tulane on a 4th down in the red zone out of the end zone. They do it, but it still feels like a loss because it feels like they have to knock out everybody by 30 going down the road. We're going to circle back on this, obviously, because we're going to be playoff heavy tonight. Everything is starting to kind of at least point. Everything is pointing in a direction. We're going to try and get all this stuff in the same direction. But first, welcome again to the Field of 12. George Whitfield was the 3 best quarterbacks you're going to find anywhere talking about any type of ball. If you're at the tailgate, if you're at your girl's place, if it's ladies' night, if you got your crew there, grab something cold to sip on. Join us right now because we're going to go into our favorite ritual, which is the toast of the week. Or Bryce, what's it called? If we don't toast, we do what?
A toss.
Toss of the week. Ironically, we haven't had one of those yet, I don't think. We're going to start with Bryce Petty since he ironed me out on that. Bryce, you're toasted. Wait, whoa, no. First, our universal toast of the week, godfather of college football. We saw you, sir, in Cincinnati, University of Cincinnati today. Don the Bearcat. Who knows how many hats that is for you. Coach Lee Corso, we love and respect you, sir. Godfather of college football. That's their first toast. Bryce Petty.
Now Wyatt Earp can take it away.
Thank you. I've got so many things to say on this Oregon thing, just so you guys know. But how do you not say Jeff Brom? I mean, in terms of head coaches, beware if you're a top 5 team. They will dethrone you and do it kindly. So Jeff Brom, hell, man, you got 2 games under your belt this season that knocking off top 5 teams is tough to do. Hats off to you,
Coach Braun. Trevor Knight.
I will keep it in the same family today in honor of that big win, Purdue over Michigan State. Take it a little a roundabout way to my man Drew Brees, the former Boilermaker. Watching this guy getting paid by NBC in his first year out. First of all, hats off to you for making the smooth transition. But I'll give you a toast. But my man needs to work on his skills a little bit. He looks a little shaky up there on stage. But shout out to him and his Boilermaker family for a big day.
So wait, is that a toast?
Is it a toast or a toss?
It's maybe a little bit of both.
It's a toast because there's respect because it's Drew Brees, but it's really a toss.
But if it was anybody else, it'd be a toss.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, okay.
All right, so be it.
That makes sense.
Shout out to the Hall of Famer, Mr.
Sorta,
Breeze.
I mean,
sort of.
Christian Hackenberg.
well, now I feel bad for this, but I mean, I do want to shout out this kid because he did show up both of the big games that Purdue has been able to pull off, and it's their trigger man, Aiden O'Connell. Kid was a walk-on. I think he's got a hell of a story. Goes out today and just casually goes 40 for 54 for 536 and 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, played a real clean game. Kid can spin it, keep it up. And here's to Aiden O'Connell, trigger man of the Purdue Boilermakers.
Trigger happy.
Trigger happy.
Trigger happy, but he connected.
And my toast is to the White Walkers of Athens, Georgia. Once again, against SEC competition,
Jeez.
4 quarters, they allow 6 points. UGA, Kirby Smart. I hope it ends regular season for that entire defensive unit and their staff to be in New York, an unprecedented set of circumstances for an unprecedented unit in college football. The White Walkers, the Bulldogs, we're with you. All right, let's start jogging. Let's start jogging. Again, we are so happy that you guys are with us. If you have questions, we had a lot of questions last week. We're excited about them. If you have questions, buzz us up. You can go to Twitter, the Field of 12. Send them to any of the guys, Trevor, Bryce, Christian, myself. We'll get those questions. Dagan, our producer, will run it across our screen. I'll spit it back out to you, and you'll get your question answered. We'll get rolling. Let's go to the biggest game of the day, really the biggest sound of the day, a huge thud in the Midwest. Once again, the Giant Killers come up out of their cave and got one. Michigan State Spartans go down to Purdue, and it wasn't even close. No smoke and mirrors, no 80-yard field goal with time expanding. I mean, expiring. They knock out the Spartans, and Michigan State's basically out right now. So our resident Big Ten expert, Christian Hackenberg, you're looking right there. There we go. This is kind of what we expected, but kind of not what we expected. We expected Titans to knock out Titans, not middleweights to knock out Titans. But again, Purdue has this knack.
Yeah, it's
Dagan, can you go back
man.
up with the stats, Dagan? Go ahead, Hack.
So the crazy part is, I mean, Michigan State still went for damn near 500 yards total offense today. They were 6-13 on third down, which is pretty acceptable. But they did lose a fumble and they did throw an interception. Ultimately, in those types of games, Purdue came out, didn't hurt themselves. They did have one fumble, but didn't hurt themselves as much as Michigan State. And like you said, George, I mean, they pretty much walked into that game and played with them blow for blow, slug for slug. They did have one trick play, which was pretty sweet. But other than that, I mean, they really just played clean football and operated and executed. For Michigan State, you know, it's a little bit of a letdown. But that's one of the things that watching them, you did see defensively. Even watching the Michigan game, they're super aggressive on defense. I mean, they really don't not necessarily super sound. A lot of times they'll send the house, play that 3 deep, 2 under coverage, hope they hit home. And if you as an offense can get the ball out in those situations and get the ball in space and capitalize on that, it leaves yourself vulnerable from a defensive standpoint. So I think Michigan State played on par offensively. Like I said, I don't think it was a letdown. Anytime you put up 500 yards, you feel pretty good about yourselves. But I think defensively, they shot their shot, and Purdue capitalized where teams in the past haven't been able to capitalize, and it ultimately caught up to them. I don't think it's one of those things where Michigan State needs to go back to the drawing board and reconfigure. It's just that type of thought process. That type of thought process caught up to them, and it was what it was. So Again, hats off to Purdue. You can't take any of the credit away, but for Michigan State, there's still ball in front of them. And I just hope they keep their heads down and keep chopping wood, because there's some opportunities coming down the pipe for them.
Oh, no doubt. Oh, our producer, Dagan Hughes, just sent over a question from our man, Randy in Tampa. This one is for Trevor Knight. Michigan State plays Maryland, Ohio State, Penn State in the next 3 weeks. Randy from Tampa wants to know, Trevor, if they run the table, are they still a heavyweight in the Final Four?
Not at this point. I mean, absolutely not. Right. It's tough to say if they are going to come out and be a heavyweight with a loss like this. Yes, Purdue's the giant killer, but I think there's other teams, like I mentioned before, that are going to come out of the back and just have better marquee wins, right? It'll certainly be in the conversation. I'd love to hear Hack's thoughts on that. I know he's shaking in his boots over there, but that's my gut feeling right now as we go into this final stretch.
It's just more and more of the argument. It's more and more of the argument as to why this whole thing needs to get expanded. And I think it'd be good for college football. It'd be good for teams like this, because on any Saturday, someone can slip up, right? There's going to be a few teams who do their thing, but it puts people in really tough situations when it comes to who they're inserting. Let's let the kids play it out. Let's put the best 12 teams out there, which gives a lot of representation, whether it be conference champion, non-conference champion, the two best teams from the Power Fives, and then throw in 2 wild cards and let the guys play it out. I think it'd be great for the fans. I think it'd be great when it comes to being able to fulfill those Cinderella stories, and no one is sitting there at the end of the season with those what ifs. Mm-hmm. If you're not a top 12 team, I think that's enough. And you have to swallow that pill. But if you're in there, you at least have a chance to play it out and see what happens. And I think that the sport needs it and the people need it, in my opinion.
I agree. Bryce Petty, can you, like, a lot of attention, and I just did it here on our own run here. Like, sometimes the headliner losing is the headline, and it shouldn't always be like that. Michigan State lost tonight because Purdue knocked them out. And this is the second top 5 team Purdue has knocked out. Like, can you take the people at home inside the Purdue program, and what kind of culture, what kind of connectivity, and what kind of fire they must be rolling on right now to get up for these monster games?
Yeah, I mean, interestingly enough, I think there's just teams that really do rise to the occasion. I think there's teams that love to have big games, away locker rooms, home locker rooms. It doesn't really matter. That they just wake up with a little bit more juice than when they're just playing, a smaller Division I, a team that they can beat, kind of handily and should be. I think Purdue and what Jeff Brom has done over the last couple of years there has kind of presented this culture of allowing these guys to rise to the occasion. And to be totally honest with you, I'd love to go, on a Tuesday, Wednesday practice, to Indiana and see these guys on a week where, they got a top 5 matchup or a top 10 matchup, because, and as we've talked about it, and Hacks mentioned before, the Big Ten, man, is not a cupcake lead by any means. And I think we've seen that week in and week out. And so Purdue, again, kind of in the West, behind Wisconsin, behind Minnesota, they do enough to just continue to have their name in the mix. And I think, again, that's kind of top down. That's the culture top down. When you get forgotten about, it takes games like this to get you back on the national scene. And I think they just love to be there.
I love it. So we have some upheaval in the Big Ten, but we knew it was going to come down like this. We didn't know it was going to come from the giant killers. Let's go a little south now in the SEC. If the Big Ten had a big surprise today, it was business as usual for the Georgia Bulldogs, aka the White Walkers. Trevor Knight, they hold Missouri, a fellow SEC team, to 6 points over the span of a full game here. Stetson Bennett continues to roll. Continuity. They have two quarterbacks now because JT Daniels is back healthy. Georgia is rolling. What is the biggest takeaway and what is the biggest threat to the Bulldogs going forward?
The biggest takeaway is this. Number one, your comment of sending the entire defense for Georgia to New York for the Heisman ceremony continues to sound better and better and better. You don't even have to turn on the TV and you know what you're going to get out of that defense. And that type of confidence, even as a viewer and as a fan, is hard to come by. You can plug and play the quarterbacks. We've been talking about that for weeks. You saw both of them play today. They can both move the ball down the field. They each had, I think Stetson had 2 touchdown passes. JT had 1. He did have a pick, but plug and play there. If they just run the football and play the defense that they're having, not make crucial mistakes, they're going to continue to do what they're going to do. I'm flipping through my calendar right now, and I'm just marking off W's all the way through to that SEC championship game. And that's where we can potentially, and I'm saying that very lightly, potentially have somebody even give Georgia a threat.
Christian Hackenberg, if you are Kirby Smart, when do you have to start thinking about a letdown, or when do you start looking ahead at Alabama, or do you just stay on your course? I hate to say business as usual, but these guys have been business the whole season long. As Kirby Smart, and let me just run this past you, Hack. And this is the numbers I'm giving you is what they allowed each week defensively. Clemson, 3 points. UAB, 7. South Carolina, 13. Vandy, shutout. Arkansas, shutout. Auburn, 10. Kentucky, 13. Florida, 7. Missouri, 6. The 13 points they gave up to South Carolina and Kentucky is the most points they've given up all year, and they did it twice. And I bet you they grit their teeth down to sawdust for doing that. What is the thinking if you're Kirby Smart and his office? What is the thinking like going forward? Do you have to protect or do you stay attacking?
No, I think they stay aggressive. And I think to kind of answer that second question that you brought up to Trevor and expand upon it, I think the only thing that's going to stop Georgia is themselves. And it's very rare you get to say that about a college football team in today's world with the distribution of talent and how unpredictable it is when you sit there and like we're talking like Purdue, they beat Iowa and then they get let down by the next week and they get beat by like a Northwestern or whoever the hell it was. But it's a team that based upon how they played, they shouldn't have gotten beat by. And then they come out and they straight up go blow for blow and beat a really, really good Michigan State team. It's like, that's the unpredictability and the variability that you're used to seeing in college football from a week to week basis. Georgia just doesn't do it. I mean, like you said, I think Georgia's given up 6 touchdowns through 10 weeks in the SEC. I mean, I can't think of another defense that's done that since I've been alive. And that's going back. I mean, like, that's insane, man. And like I said, I think the biggest threat to them is themselves. And for Kirby Smart, I think it would be unwise to expect anything less, to let off the brakes, to look forward, to do anything like that. I just try my best as a coach to keep these guys in whatever mindset that they're in, because it's unheard of and it's exceptional. And it's for people who love football, it's beautiful. And I think they've really found a great system down there. They found a great rhythm and they're staying in it, and they're staying in it better than anybody else in the country right now. And hopefully they can carry it out for the next, 4 to 8 weeks, however long it is, until that national championship game, because I think they can really do something super special. So, for me, like I said, I think it's only thing stopping Georgia is going to be Georgia.
This is a cool question here. Thank you, Dagan. From the Gamma Phi House at the University of Georgia. This one is from Mr. Baylor. Bryce, yes. I assume that's you, Mr. Baylor. The Gamma Phi House.
Suck it, Trevor.
at the University of Georgia. They want to know, will their Georgia Bulldog defense be in New York?
Will their Georgia Bulldog defense be in New York? I would love to see it. I know that there's never been a unit to ever go to New York. We've seen a couple of defensive guys have the opportunity to go there. But again, to y'all's point, what we've done is, and what we've seen rather as college football fans is unprecedented. And especially in a day and age too, where there's so much, again, just like in the NFL, there's so much prowess and excitement on the offensive side of the ball to a QB position. What we just saw last, I mean, 100%. So what we are seeing in this day and age, especially like, I mean, we're about to, they've already played Arkansas, Kendall Briles, who again is that kind of run and shoot offense behind Coach Briles. We're about to see it playing against Tennessee next week with Heupel and what he's done there in that offensive scheme as well. You're seeing, offenses that are built to put up points and do with tempo. So it's not just this kind of 3-yard cloud of dust to what they're doing. I mean, these guys are playing defense at such a high level against a lot of different offensive schemes. And man, they just get you off schedule. They make you frustrated. They make you turn the football over. They put you, especially if you watch their special teams too, their special teams is really good. I mean, you're putting guys at, 10, 15 yard line coming out. So I think, to the Gamma House, or whoever asked that.
The Gamma Phi House, University of Georgia.
Sweet. Thank you, Chelsea or Brittany or whoever that was. But I think I can see your dogs being on top in New York. Yeah.
So just to cap this out, and I'm just going to jump ball this question. Does Stetson Bennett give these guys the best chance to win it all, or does it not matter? Dagan, can you put up how our man Stetson did tonight? Do you have his stats going into Missouri today? There we go. Stetson Bennett.
This is business as usual. Yeah. I mean, this is your shopping list on a Tuesday going to Target. I mean, this is what he does. He gets the same thing every week. He's going to do this. I think this is built off their defense, but they score points, So I think that, what we were talking about the very first week and even into the second week of this show was talking about JT Daniels. But I think that Stetson has done everything that he needs to do to say, hey, man, I am the leader of this offense. I continue to put us in good positions. Don't turn the ball over, and we keep moving chains. And so I think that's all that matters when you're talking about winning football games, especially behind good defenses.
And they can run the football too. I mean, they control the line of scrimmage on both sides, and that's so important.
Really, they run the football first, and then those quarterbacks come in there, and then to your point, Hack. Yep. Fellas, so that's the White Walkers, and we know them. I mean, we're talking about unprecedented things about an entire unit walking into the Heisman Trophy ceremony, taking up the first 2 rows, having a seat, waiting for their name to be called so 24 hands or 22 hands can hold up a singular trophy. But let's not forget about the Roman Army. Today, University of Alabama took on LSU. Great fight. It actually did go 12 rounds, more of an ode to Coach Orgeron and keeping the fight going down there in LSU. Trevor Knight, the Roman Army has been just taking care of business. Not everything has been the sexy 2-round blowout like the Bulldogs have been doing, but they, again, take care of business. And look at the young quarterback right there. Bryce Young, again, 300 yards passing, really efficient, keeping these guys on track. Jamison Williams, 10 grabs, $160. What can we expect from the Tide, knowing that their train tracks are going to cross across Georgia coming down the path here?
I think we're so used to seeing out of Alabama what we're seeing out of Georgia this year, not to quite to that level, but you're just kind of used to, hey, show up Saturday, whoever's on the other side of the ball from Alabama, they're gonna run over them, they're gonna win. We'll see them in the playoff, just mark it through. And this year you're seeing a Roman Army that is taking a few spears over their kind of front line, right? They've got some blows to them. They're getting back up. They're moving forward. They're going to be there in the end. but they're a lot more tattered this year. And I don't know if I can pinpoint what it is. Because like you said, you've got a quarterback that's playing really good. You've got a solid defense. You run the ball well. All the things that have made them a great team in the past, it may just not be to the level that we're used to. That being said, when they meet up in the SEC championship against the White Walkers, they're going to be ready to play. They're going to look in the mirror and they're going to say, we're the White Walkers too. We've run this conference for a long time and we've been here before. And I think that experience of being there before and overcoming that, winning that football game is going to bode well for a lot of the leaders in that Alabama locker room. So I'm looking forward to that game. I still think Georgia handles it, relatively easily. And I know that's crazy to say, easily over Alabama, but I think it will be a phenomenal football game to watch.
So let's go off of that right now, Hack.
Yeah.
Trevor gave that to us. And curious enough, we have another question coming in from the audience. We love these. Our producer, Dagan, keeps popping these in here. Our man, Clifford from Milton, Georgia. Hello, Clifford. What's up, man? Glad you're rolling. Clifford wants to know if Bama wins out and knocks out the White Walkers, are they the number 1 seed in the whole thing?
Cool. I think it depends on how they knock them out, based upon how the College Football Playoff Committee has kind of ranked things right now. I think a lot of it has to do with style points. I think there's definitely an element of that in there, and feel. I think if they go and they beat them by 3, no.
What happens if they beat them by if they only beat them by 3, Georgia maintains number 1?
I think so, just because of the A&M loss.
Like if it's 10-7,
Yeah.
Bama, it's still Georgia's. Because they're both lost teams.
Yeah. I don't know. I would think so. But again, I don't get paid to make that decision, and I wouldn't want to be the guy to have to make that decision, quite frankly. But yeah, if it's 10-7 Bama, I just don't think, that there can be it'd be a tough argument, dude. Honestly, that'd be, like I said, that I wouldn't want to be the guy having to make that decision.
Bryce Petty, another question. We love the questions. Keep the questions coming in here. The Kelly twins from the University of Alabama. Why isn't Bryce Young talked about more for the Heisman? I'm gonna give that to you, Bryce Petty.
Yeah, I love that. So I don't know, honestly. I love what he's doing, and he continually does it, week in and week out. And I think especially in a year where you don't really have a guy that's just separating himself like we've seen in the past. A Kyler, a Baker, Marcus Mariota back in the day. Even though he's not Spanish, I don't know why I had that accent to it, but it's fine.
That's all right.
But look, I think that he deserves to be talked about. I know that we've talked about Kenneth Walker. I know that we've talked about Georgia's defense, which would be awesome if they go. But I think that he's putting them in again, what the Heisman is, and if I was a voter, what I would be looking at is do they elevate the team? Do they make the team better? Does their performance in certain games and big time situations result in wins for their team? And I think that even when you look at the A&M loss, he still played well. When you look at the Florida game, where again they did have some spears thrown at their defense a little bit, he's the one that kept them in the game and actually won that game for him. So,
well, Bryce, to that point, I don't want to mean to cut you off, but
no, today, you did. It's fine.
Yeah, I know. It's okay though. I kept the 6-shooter. I went with the switchblade. So they netted 6 yards of rushing today. I don't know, like Alabama netted six total rushing yards today against an LSU team. So to your point, he basically accounted for 90 some odd percent of their offense, right?
Right.
So
right.
To your point, he's a kid who, he is a true freshman, right? Was he an early enrollee, true freshman?
Yeah.
as a kid for a true freshman playing an LSU team with everything that goes into that type of game. And yeah, it was a little bit of a dogfight, but he took the weight of the world on his shoulders and performed tonight.
I agree. Thank you. I mean, that was again from the Kelly twins to me. So I would like to retweet what Hack said, just so I have the final word. So thank you, Kelly twins.
It's a we thing, Bryce. It's a we thing.
It's an absolute we thing. How about that? Bryce Petty, the Kelly twins, University of Alabama. Hope you guys are
crushing it with these sorority girls tonight. Thank you.
Listen, we're expanding. I hope you guys are doing great down there on Alabama's campus, enjoying this late run. We have the Buckeyes, the Bearcats, and Wake Forest. But before we move on, I want to tell you guys a little bit about our partners over at BetRivers Sportsbook. If you haven't signed up with BetRivers yet, now is the time, because they are offering a $250 match bonus for your first deposit. But what sets them apart is that they require just one playthrough to turn your bonus into cash money. With their new Rush Pay instant approval, withdrawing your wins is safer, more secure, and more reliable than ever before. With football season kicking off, get into the action just like these guys by going with BetRivers.com today. By downloading BetRivers iOS app, you must be 21 years old or older. If you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Fellas, there are a few more problems going on in college football. Let's start in our best of the rest right now with what happened down in Carolina. Wake Forest. Granted, Cinderella. I didn't think it struck 12 this early. I thought they had a little bit more time. It crashed tonight. They got into a shootout with our man Sam Howell, Trevor Knight. How big of a win is this for the Tar Heels, or how big of a shot in the heart is this for the ACC? Because effectively the ACC is dead now.
We talked last week about Wake Forest, of all people, coming out of the ACC and potentially having a chance, not even to have an argument, but to say, hey, I'm a conference champion, look at me, and at least draw a little attention. To your point, it's gone now. I picked UNC at the beginning of the year as a team that was going to overperform. They haven't done that, but they do have a couple great tools in their tool chest. I think Sam Howell's a great player. He played okay today. It wasn't anything crazy, but Ty Chandler went off today running the football. Dude had 4 touchdowns, over 200 yards on 22 carries. He was just toting the rock, and he was the horse in the stable today that allowed them to get a huge win at home over a top 10 team. Again, bat your eyes at it, do whatever you want to do. It's still Wake Forest. They're kind of on this Cinderella path, but they have won a lot of football games up to this point. To take down a top 10 team is nothing to hang your head about.
Speaking of hang your head, I think there's going to be some heads semi-hung in Columbus tonight, and I'm going to go with you, Hack. Let's go to Ohio State at Nebraska. You were talking about, aside from like getting stumped at home by Oregon, Ohio State's probably the hottest team in college football. Here they are on the road against an underwhelming Nebraska team. Like week 1, we told Nebraska fans, don't mind the Big Ten championship. If you got something else to do, go do it. Certainly don't mind the college football playoff. Make a watch party at your home. You're not going anywhere. Make a watch party at home. Watch it. And they tangle up the Buckeyes by 9. Hack, will this affect Ohio State in this beauty pageant? Because that's basically what it is in this back straightaway. Or is it no big deal because at the end of the day, it was a W?
Yeah, I think the beauty of it is Ohio State still has a few monster matchups towards the end of the year.
Michigan State and Michigan.
Michigan and Michigan State, correct.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, that's the hard part. And watching Nebraska all year, I mean, if you remember, they played Oklahoma pretty tight. Nebraska, even under Scott Frost, has never gone out and just got completely embarrassed by teams that everybody thought that they were going to go out and get embarrassed by. They beat themselves a lot. It's not a bad football team. Defensively, they got some talent. Offensively, I just think they lack a lot of consistency, especially at the quarterback position. I think Adrian Martinez is a very dynamic football player, but when it comes to being able to execute an offense in a manner that is going to lift them due to their deficiencies of not necessarily being able to go out and pull a bunch of 5 stars and guys that are going to run by a ton of people. I think Nebraska is in that space now where it's not 1995 and the late 90s anymore. They're not an attractive landing spot for a lot of kids. They're a developmental role that has a ton of funding due to the fact that they have a ton of history and a massive alumni base that loves to pour money into the football program. So, for me, like I said, it's a win. I think Ohio State still has a lot of great opportunities ahead of them. And I think Nebraska gets a really bad rap, but I think it's a very talented team that never really disappoints on the type of stage when they get these opportunities, but also never finishes it and ends up on the winning side of these things, at least under Scott Frost. So ultimately, if I'm Ohio State, there's bigger fish to fry coming down the pipe, and you got to buckle up for those games. But a win's a win. And I know people in Columbus are going to be upset. That's just how Ohio State is. But they control their own destiny better than most people. Like in Oregon, for example, Wyatt down there shooting the trigger. They have opportunities ahead of them, unlike Oregon and a few other teams.
Speaking of fish to fry and a win's a win, that's the same bucket Cincinnati's in, same boat Cincinnati's in, Bryce Petty, the Fighting Bryce Petty's of the University of Cincinnati. The state of Ohio today, both took on lesser challenges, and they both basically just, like, I don't want to say survived them, but they just outlasted them. It wasn't a knockout. It certainly wasn't a knockout. The Bearcats needed a 4th down stop within 2 minutes of the game to hold off Tulsa. So here we are, and Christian just said it beautifully. It's like Ohio State does have bigger fish to fry. Cincinnati, this may be the biggest catfish they have, given SMU. They got catfish, a little trout, another catfish, a tire. Like,
I know. They don't have anybody. They don't have anybody. And what we've done for them, or what the committee has done to them, is put up a really, really hard expectation. And I don't know what a style point is. I don't know if there's actually a definition of what a style point is, other than the fact that what we have put on them is you have to beat people by 55 points. In the world, and Trevor and I talk about this on our podcast, especially against, in reference to Oklahoma, right? Oklahoma has done nothing in terms of style points to really be in a position where they're at. But what the committee showed us this week when they came out with these rankings was, Notre Dame at Notre Dame did not matter. A ranked Indiana at Indiana did not matter. So you have to go and truly, execute your dudes, not only while they're sleeping, but actually while they're looking at you. And that's what's tough. They're not only fighting, the team that's out there playing, they're fighting themselves, they're fighting the committee. I think it's just going to be too much for Cincinnati, and it is still a we thing, but I think it could be a dead thing when it comes down the stretch here.
So let's go right to that. Bryce threw out style points, and I'm talking to Bryce, Trevor, Hack. To me, in my opinion, I'm just going to lob it up to you guys. Style points basically mean that I would beat my opponent the way you would beat my opponent. So if I'm Cincinnati and I'm taking on Tulsa, I got to treat Tulsa the way Georgia would, Oregon, Ohio State, Bama, etc. If I scrape past, outlast, or get by Tulsa in 12 rounds, the other ones aren't doing that. They're going to knock these dudes out before the first round bell ends. To me, that's style points. Like, I don't know if it's like a magic number, but I have to do these dudes the way the rest of these dudes like sitting in the bullpen would do them? Am I off or am I semi-close?
I mean, I think when you say it, Georgia carves them up, Alabama carves them up, Ohio State carves them up. I think you could even say Michigan State carves them up.
Oregon.
I think you can run to the top 12.
Yeah, I mean, there's a handful of teams that carve them up.
Right. So that's what I'm saying. It's all relative, right? Because take Alabama, LSU. How many now? And we've talked about this because
do you think Cincinnati shows up and plays LSU that time?
No.
I don't know.
So what do you think Cincinnati would do with LSU, Bryce?
I think that they have to give them everything they got and then some. I really do. But again, that's not the point, right? Because the point is that the committee, as probably all four of us, do not see Cincinnati in that top four. But when you start looking at what the top four has done this year to get in there, you've got, again, an Oregon and an Ohio State with an Alabama. If you're just looking at the top four, does Georgia carve up LSU way better than Alabama? Does a Ohio State carve up an LSU way better than Alabama or way
they
more?
don't have, but
I think we should leave Georgia out of any of these arguments.
The White Walkers are going to shut these teams out. That's the White Walkers.
Yeah.
We're talking football teams. We ain't talking White Walkers.
Which, by the way, for everybody listening, we've already said that Georgia has a bye in the playoff. They got the first and the second spot.
They should have the first and second spot.
Yeah.
But to Hack's point, Bryce, we're talking everybody out of the top four. So you really don't hold
going
the top
into the
four.
four. Gotcha.
Correct. So you got to get in. You have to show something to get into the club. You got to have an ID, who's with you, et cetera, et cetera. I got him, and him. Like, you got to show something to get. If you're in, what's the difference? All you got to do is maintain. But if I'm Cincinnati, who else? Michigan, et cetera, but especially
Oklahoma,
Cincinnati because, correct.
Yeah.
Cincinnati, I mean, they're already wearing an 80-pound,
rucksack. They were rucksack,
like versus, and everybody else is getting ready for this track meet. Like, Trevor, is that fair or is that too much of a high wire act or over the top to look at Cincinnati and say, you got to treat Tulsa the way everybody else above you would treat Tulsa?
No, the way that you said that a second ago is comparing yourself to the Georgias and the Alabamas of the world and going to your opponent and treating them that way. That is spot on, because I hate to say it, but a Cincinnati has to go in there and have those style points to even get a look. The only thing keeping them in the conversation right now is the goose egg in that L column. The committee is sitting here going, SMU, please just beat these guys so we don't even have to worry about it.
Right.
But on that point, Trevor, too, what's interesting, though, is you had your boys down in Norman at number 4, and the committee saw them the same way, though.
Which is interesting, but this is where it's different. Oklahoma plays in a Power 5 conference, and I know the Big 12 isn't like anything crazy, but it is a Power 5 conference, and that holds weight. The
Cincinnati's ranked above them
week in and week out is, I get that. I'm just saying from an undefeated standpoint, right? Going back to the Cincinnati question, they unfortunately have to beat people bad. We've talked about how it's really hard to win in any league at this level,
even on the argument, though, too, of like what you have left coming down the chute towards the end of the year. That Oklahoma still has Baylor, Oklahoma State, right?
Yep.
Now Baylor took a little bit of a blip today, but still, I mean, we play
way better at home too. So
yeah. But like Oklahoma still has opportunities. Whereas Cincinnati just has to go win. That's it. And they can't, any of these wins heading down the pipe for Cincinnati carry no weight compared to everybody else.
We talk about, the committee and all this stuff, but there's a lot of money talk going on too, right? Like there's money to be made in these playoff games and viewerships, all that stuff. if you're sitting around a table and there's money stakes there, you're going, okay, Cincinnati's undefeated, but they barely beat Tulsa. Do you really think that people are going to watch the second half and all these ads that all these companies are paying for in the second half when they get absolutely curb stomped? Right. I mean, I think there's a lot more variables to it, and I'm probably reading too much into it, but there's probably a lot more variables to it than just what's your win-loss column and how have you looked playing. Right.
Well, it's like how well is Cincinnati going to travel? You know, even to that point, you know what I mean? I mean, how many Cincinnati fans are there out there besides Bryce Petty, who's going to buy out a whole block of the Marriott,
the whole suite?
Excuse me. Y'all roll in with me. I got this.
But just the market, you know, it's interesting.
And to Hack's point, I feel like the committee already showed us what they value.
They do. They did. Yeah. 100%.
Cincinnati coming in undefeated. The AP poll, coaches poll, they've been riding. They've been sitting up there. They got a nice bump from Notre Dame. The committee gets together. Oh, that's great, Cincinnati. You guys keep up the good work. 7. So really, Oklahoma, who's really kind of backed their way into some wins, stole some wins, lucked up on a couple. I don't even know what you call the thing at Kansas that took your freshman quarterback pulling the ball from a tailback in midfield on a 4th down call to get 3 yards out of his belly. Well, I don't know what you call that, except that they play in the Power 5 and they have a legacy and a tradition in the playoffs versus this Cincinnati team that hasn't lost in 2 years. This is going to be a heck of a run. Let's just go into it. So initially, the initial college football rankings. Dagan, can you give us the playoff rankings? The initial top 4 rankings. So the White.
Well, we can start here, right?
Okay, we'll start here.
Because BYU is going to be tough, and this is George. You want to talk about who actually has a chance left, or do you? Just on the initial thought of what these rankings are.
I want to talk about this is the initial rankings.
So out of this group, let's just say A&M and Oklahoma State are alive, right? Out of these guys, those are the 2 teams that are alive.
And A&M's got a hell of a win, right? I mean, you did beat the Roman Army or whatever that we like to call them.
And they beat Auburn today, which is a top 15 matchup, right?
100%. And you still have, you're at Ole Miss next week, right? And then like what we talk about, Prairie View, and then at LSU, who showed up to be a pretty decent team. So I think they do have a chance if there's some slippage up north here that they could. They're not going to make a run to the west, though. That's the thing. They're not going to jump at 2 losses with Mississippi State and Arkansas. They're not going to jump Alabama.
Right.
So is it a 1-loss A&M, right?
It's 2 loss.
Mississippi State and Arkansas.
That Mississippi State deal hurt.
Yeah.
All right,
it's Sugar Bowl.
So, okay. Here is where your wedding crashers live, right here.
Mm-hmm.
So Cincinnati, I mean, they can't just kill people. They have to decapitate them. Michigan has to run the table. Oklahoma
wakes up out of there.
Oklahoma has some real traps in front of them. I mean, I hate to even call them traps. At Baylor, Oklahoma State, Iowa State, all 3 have the firepower. No tricks, no onside kicks. They can all take out Oklahoma. Like, they're just going to watch the Kansas tape. Wake Forest, it was fun. You should take a picture of this. You guys got up to number 9. That's great for you. And Notre Dame, I mean, what do we do with Notre Dame?
No. Just keep going. Canada. Canada.
So
Bryce wants to ship them up. Exports.
Again, it's a good stat in recruiting because Notre Dame can say, once again, we were top 10 in college football. So really, we're talking about 6, 7, 8. Are we still talking about 7?
Are we still talking about Michigan?
I mean, you still have Ohio State left to play as Michigan. So 100%.
They got Penn State.
Penn State.
And Penn State, yes. But in terms of your the group to knock off, the unit to knock off is Ohio State.
Yeah.
That gets you into the Big Ten championship. You do that, you're in. So I think we're 100% still talking about Michigan.
So let's just play this right here. Trevor, Bryce, Hack. Michigan runs out from here. They beat the two teams we just talked about, Penn State, Ohio State. They knock out whoever the West farts out from their side of the deal. Or Oklahoma gets past. They win the next 3 games by 7, because that's basically what they've been doing. I don't even know if the Big 12 has a conference championship. I assume they do. They win that. If there's room for one between these two programs, where does it go? A Big 10 champ with 1 loss in Michigan, or a Big 12 champ in Oklahoma that's really played C-plus football all year, undefeated.
I don't even think it's a question. I know that's tough being a Big 12 guy, but I don't even think it's a question. I don't know what you want to say, Trevor, but
the only thing is,
wait, it's not a question. Meaning it goes to who, Bryce?
It goes to Big 10.
Yeah,
bigger win.
Yeah, I mean, the way that
you survived that conference, dude.
That's what I'm saying. But the way too, if you're looking at, you've had pretty much 3 teams all year long in the Big 12 that have been ranked. Baylor came up. Oklahoma State came up as well. It was really just Oklahoma and Iowa State, and that's what we were talking about. Pregame or preseason show was Oklahoma or Iowa State. That's going to be the battle at the very end to determine the Big 12 championship, and then Oklahoma State and Baylor rose up there. The way that Oklahoma, in terms of what you just mentioned, in terms of what a style points, how do you barely beat, into the fourth quarter a Tulane team? How do you barely beat into the fourth quarter a Nebraska team? How do you barely beat a Kansas team that people are shellacking at Lawrence, at home? I mean, you just, when you look at in totality, the season that in terms of production that Lincoln Riley and the Oklahoma Sooners have put on the field, you cannot even begin to think that OU belongs in there outside of what Michigan has to go through at the back end of this season, or Michigan State, or an Ohio State, since we're talking about those 3. That's my opinion. Go ahead, Trevor, since your pretty smile is going.
The thing is, I don't disagree with you.
Yes.
But I do, because
that's a
it's
quote.
kind of similar to his toast. It's similar to his toast.
It's similar.
Toast.
But listen,
I've never heard that quote in my life.
He said,
I don't disagree with you, but I do. That's a toast.
Listen.
Hey,
Oklahoma.
hold on real quick, Trevor. I know that you're a good arguer with your wife, because that's exactly probably what you say to Lacey. I don't disagree with you, but I do.
I do.
I have my ways.
Go ahead.
You just leave her confused.
Guys,
as shit.
Oklahoma has been to the college football playoff multiple times now. This will be, and I'm saying will because I believe it's going to happen, the first time they go to it undefeated. They had Baker. They had Kyler. They never got in as an undefeated team. They always had 1 loss. Now you're telling me for the first time they run through the conference undefeated and they're going to get turned down? It's not going to happen. It's an undefeated Power 5 conference champion.
But look at that.
We're talking about Big 12. We're talking about Big 12 versus Big 10 here, assuming that Oregon gets in, because the committee, again, has already shown us what they want. So you're telling me, let me ask you this then. How many times has Oklahoma been national championship? And how many times has Ohio State been the national championship? They are going to pull the Big Ten. I get it.
All I'm saying is that goose egg has, in the L column, has to carry some sort of weight.
It doesn't.
How do you put in a Baker and Kyler team and you don't put in this team?
Because I'd love to see what they were doing in November, 1, and then 2, it is about that momentum going into the playoffs.
All right. So then the argument isn't going to be Big 10 versus Big 12. That's not going to be the argument, because I think then if Oklahoma's undefeated and a 1-loss Big 10 champion, both of them are in, plus Georgia, and then you got one other spot.
You're saying that one of them is going to hop, or both of them are going to hop Oregon that's already in right now?
Certainly not. Certainly not.
What
I think the
What I
committee's
s-
already shown you that they like Oregon better than they like
All right,
Oklahoma.
so everybody here besides me agrees that if Oklahoma goes undefeated and wins the Big 12, they still don't get in.
Yeah.
Pending if
I'll
everybody
put
else takes
my
care of-
Bet Rivers money on that right now.
So be it.
I didn't say that.
So-
I think the wild card is Alabama. Do they take a 2-loss Alabama if Alabama goes and gets beat by Georgia? Do they take a 2-loss Alabama or not? I think that is ultimately the thing that needs to get decided, and we're not going to find that out for another 4 weeks.
Well, let's
5
answer
weeks.
that question. Let's answer that right now. Texas A&M, do we really look at Oklahoma's schedule and think that Texas A&M couldn't run the table against Tulane? I don't even know who WCU is. Nebraska, West Virginia, Kansas State, Texas, who's just, they're in the spa. TCU, Kansas, Texas Tech, Baylor, Iowa State, Oklahoma State. Texas A&M, who went toe-to-toe with Bama and led for 3 of the 4 quarters and beat them. They couldn't go through Oklahoma's schedule and get them?
I think they could.
Okay, so now answer that question. So you answer that question.
I get what you're trying to do here,
But
George.
that's Bama's first loss. Bama loses again, it'll be to the White Walkers. That's 2 losses. So if the committee looks at their 2 losses and says, okay, put their losses against Oklahoma's schedule. Let's just walk through Oklahoma's schedule. Technically, all win. Not technically. Let's just do the respect. They are undefeated. 5 points. 5-point differential against Tulane at home. They beat WCU 76-0. What's WCU stand for, Trevor?
No clue. Don't care.
Worcester sauce, whatever. 76. So they beat Nebraska. They beat Nebraska by 7. They beat West Virginia by 3. Kansas State by 6. They had to come down from a mile to beat Texas, but they still beat them by 7. They got TCU by 21. They got loose. Big scare at Kansas because they're down in the 4th quarter. And then they finally tagged out Texas Tech. Look at all those 12th round split decision nail biting deals
Egg in the L column.
You say that
Goose
again?
egg in the L column.
That's
the committee's saying the same thing. Please, Oklahoma
that's
slip
true,
up
but
in the
I'm
next
saying
3 weeks.
out of the Roman army, and we're already assigning a loss to them to Georgia, just in case. If they lose to Georgia, the 2 teams that beat them would knock out everybody in Oklahoma's schedule, probably also knock out Oklahoma. But I might be wrong. Hack, Bryce, I don't want to beat up his Sooners, but that's the facts. They lost to the number 14 team, and they may lose to the White Walkers. If they lose to the White Walkers, they probably still have a better claim, except for the column that says 2, but that's not your average 2.
I'm just scared. I'm just scared that what you just said is going to play out, and Notre Dame is going to get in the playoff.
Oh, man.
That's what I'm so scared. I'm so scared that Alabama's going to get beat, and that they already like Oregon, and Notre Dame is going to get in there. I would much.
I don't think Notre Dame though gets in over the
That's
Big Ten
true.
champ.
That's or Cincinnati to Georgia's point, because they lost to them heads up. So
Correct. So I don't think we have to worry about the Golden Domers.
Trevor, what does Oklahoma have to do to keep themselves out of, like, ironically, they're one of 3 or 4 programs vying the 4th chair. What do they have to do to imprint themselves on the 4th chair?
They have to win out.
just keep
Simple.
winning.
No,
Just
but
keep
no,
winning.
it's
They need
winning
help,
out
though.
enough.
No, they
Hack.
They
simply
need
have to
help.
win out. They will be one of 2 Power 5 undefeated conference champions. One
They
of
need
2.
help.
And the
And
other one,
I think they're going to have 3.
Georgia.
To Trevor's point, they also, because I would assume that Ohio State gets ranked after this.
Yeah.
Maybe not, but they're going to have 3 ranked teams coming down the stretch to solidify. I'm just saying, as it stands right now, they have done and proven nothing. If they go put up 45 against Baylor, 38 against Iowa State, and then go into the Bedlam game and put up,
Oklahoma
whatever.
State's
17.
undefeated. They finished their regular season out with a top 10 win.
That's
And
it.
then
That honestly, we're having the same conversation with Oklahoma State, but quickly, Hack, if Oklahoma, and I already ran down their wins, they beat Mustard State by 8, they beat Barbecue Tech by 9.
Right.
If they win these last 3 games, granted, Oklahoma State's respectable. We're going to have the same conversation. We could be talking about them. They're undefeated.
No, they have a loss.
Yeah, they lost.
Oh, tonight. You're right. If they beat these 3 opponents, though, Hack, and it's all single digits, and it looks like the game could have gone either way for 90% of the game until they found a way to get it done or it was given to them. Is undefeated, is that a universal term, or do you or are there different sides of an undefeated prism and Oklahoma could be on the wrong side of?
So here's my thing, because this is what I was getting into earlier when we were talking before we went live. I think there's arguments for the Big Ten and the SEC to have 2 teams represented based upon the strength of schedule and how well these teams have played. I think this is unlike the previous years, Trevor, that you were talking about with Oklahoma getting in, and it would be the first time that they would get in undefeated. I think the landscape of college football has proven to be stronger in certain areas than others, whereas I think it was more evenly distributed during these previous times that you were speaking of. I don't want to take away from the power of consistency that Oklahoma has had in terms of being there, being at the door, but they have gotten their teeth kicked in every time they got to the show. Mm-hmm. So I think it's not like a team like Ohio State, who has, I think, outside of the SEC, been the only other team to win it in the last 8 years, 9 years, 10 years. Clemson. So Clemson and Ohio State, outside of the SEC, have been the only 2 teams to win it. I just feel that I think there's a lot of strength in the SEC and specifically the Big Ten East. I think the ACC doesn't have a player in Clemson anymore, which hurts. So when you don't have that, then by default, the entire ACC is down. So they're playing for the freaking Georgia Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl. I just think that it's a unique year. I think there's strength in certain areas that there hasn't been so much strength before. And I think even in undefeated Oklahoma, because of the way that they've played, which everyone has touched on, and we don't need to continue to beat that dead horse, I think this is a year where if style points matter, if strength of schedule matters, top to bottom, all these variables that we don't really know what the weight they carry play into it. I think if there is a year that they can get hosed, this is the year, because I think there are better football teams out there. That's my only thing. And like I said, it just bodes 1,000 times more into the argument of what I was saying, is that we need to expand this freaking thing, because it's what it eliminates these arguments and we get to see it on the field.
I totally agree with you guys wholeheartedly in style points, better teams, all that kind of stuff. And what we think the rubric is for picking the top 4.
Yep.
That being said, you go out on the field every week and you get one of 2 things. You get a W or you get an L. And that is still the most important thing across the board. If this was years past and Oklahoma's a 1-loss team, obviously they don't sniff the playoff. We're not talking about them. They're outside the top 10, right? This year, they are lucky because of strength of schedule and because of the lack of style points and having a Heisman Trophy winner, that they could still get in only because of the goose egg in the L column. That's the Trevor, only reason.
And real quick,
to that point, though, people in Cincinnati are saying the same thing.
Not Power 5.
It doesn't matter, though. It doesn't matter, because what the committee showed us by putting Oregon ahead of Oklahoma is your goose egg means nothing.
Correct.
Oregon has a 1 loss to Stanford. And they still jumped them. Now, that could be because of the heads up at Columbus. They beat Ohio State. But
and Oklahoma's back heavy schedule, that they're about to go play some juggernauts.
But how heavy is that back heavy schedule though?
Correct.
It's not as heavy as a back heavy Big Ten schedule.
It's good football, but it's not. There's no.
But again, to Trevor's point though, I don't think that, because I think now we're.
But they're not playing Notre Dame.
I think what we're talking about is does Oklahoma, or can Oklahoma jump Oregon, or is the committee going to say, hey, Alabama, you lost A&M, you lost in the conference championship, you're out.
So are we all saying here that Oklahoma is even at undefeated, if they go and beat Baylor, Iowa State, Oklahoma State, that there's 0% chance that they get in, or it's dependent on the Big Ten
It's
champion?
dependent. I don't think it's a lock. I think if Oklahoma goes undefeated, you're
make their
still making a case. You're not a lock.
That's what they have to do, though. If they lose a game, they're done.
Oh, it's not even close. Agreed there. Completely agree there.
They control their own destiny, but it goes back to the initial argument is they control their own destiny, but they don't have enough weight. They don't have enough ass in the back end of the schedule to strengthen their argument. The only way they strengthen their argument is by winning out. These other teams have opportunities to strengthen their argument, even though they may have a blemish in that wins and loss column, like what you were talking about, in my opinion.
Well, we'll see.
Being honest, the Kansas should be seen as a loss already. None of these programs, Cincinnati included, would be messing around with Kansas, scrapping around on the floor of a bar, trying to get air with Kansas in the fourth quarter. None of these programs would. None of them. Hey, let's jump to the top 5 now, so Trevor can make his case with who Oklahoma has to run down. There they are, the White Walkers, the Roman Army. Obviously, there's going to be a new number 3 with Michigan State tripping up today. Oregon Ducks seem to just kind of be taking care of business, and Ohio State has 2 top 10 teams looking at them on the back stretch. Who wants to start? Basically, I'm just going to throw this out there. With Michigan State dropping, does Oregon and Ohio State just basically just scoot up if you're the committee? And then who's 5?
Yeah, I think as of right now they do, right? Honestly, I have 5 as Michigan. I think Michigan gets up there. I think they do jump Cincinnati based on everything that we've been talking about. Even on College Game Day, the committee naturally, I think, it's already kind of shown that they are just wanting Cincinnati to trip up at some point where they don't have to deal with this anymore. But I think, again, Michigan going on the road at Michigan State and losing by 4 has better style points than again beating Cincinnati beating Tulsa by 8. So I actually have Michigan at number 5.
Hack, when could Ohio State jump Oregon? Because at this point, if they both win out, they'll have identical records, and Oregon has the tie break. When and how could Ohio State jump Oregon?
I really, like I've said, I don't think that's necessarily the argument. I mean, I think Ohio State, again, has more statement game ability in terms of strength of schedule here at the back half than Oregon does. Mm-hmm. And ultimately, I think Oregon still needs to handle business. So we'll see, because we know how unpredictable the Pac-12 can be. I mean,
Oregon still has to go to Utah, and Utah's kind of proven to be a rolling. They're rolling right now.
A buzz.
Yes. So
they have Washington State, Utah, Oregon State in the Pac-12 championship.
It's interesting. So we'll see. And I don't think they're going to give Michigan that credit yet, Bryce. I think if Michigan goes and beats Penn State this week fairly well, I think that now the argument for Michigan starts becoming one of those things, because it's at Penn State. Penn State's defense is still very, very stout. So it's an opportunity for them to have that signature stamp on a win that they really haven't had this year. Michigan State game being their first opportunity, and they came up a little short. They blew a pretty decent lead in that game too. So we'll see what happens. But I like I said, I think Ohio State has everything ahead of them. I think they have a great track record with that. And, I don't think it necessarily matters whether they're 3 or 4, as long as they're in. I think they can make a run at it just because of the talent they have.
Trevor, if we move up, everybody 4 and 5 move up to 3 and 4, Michigan and Ohio State will settle that out. The next 2 programs coming up, according to the college football rankings right now, is Cincinnati and your Sooners. How will they weed that out if they both finish with goose eggs?
You guys just listen to me blab on for 30 minutes about why I think Oklahoma would be in with an undefeated record. And I still believe that. I think, and again, this is all speculation, that the committee, like we're sitting here talking about what it could look like at the end. I think the committee is looking at this as who are the best teams this week alone, right? What's your strength of schedule this week alone? As Ohio State goes through the gauntlet, they make it through. Their quality wins are going to surpass Oregon barely getting by Washington and whoever else they have on their schedule, so they will jump them. I think it's the same for an Oklahoma team, right? Oregon looks great right now because, yes, they have the bad loss to Stanford, but they beat one of the best teams in college football in Ohio State. So it's like, okay, we've seen them go toe to toe in recent history, but that's just going to get diluted as we finish out this season, right? I truly think it scared me when they put Oregon in, right? Because they have to demote them out of the top 4 when they're going to win out at this point. But if you're going week by week, at that last week going into the actual playoff selection, is Oregon one of the top 4 best teams? I don't think so. I think they get pulled out, which is a shot to the groin, but I think it's going to happen.
So, fellas, there's like the wedding crasher drama of Cincinnati and Oklahoma, Michigan battling to come in. There's also internal drama. If the Roman army, and I've made a half a case for them, 2 losses, and if you took them and put them up against any other program in the country in a neutral site, a college football fan, probably a committee member, would say, yes, Alabama's coming out of that. 2-loss Alabama to 2 quality programs, one of them being the White Walkers. I think that's also going to be the drama. We're going to keep tracking that as we go forward. We hope you guys join us next week. Big heavyweight matchups in the SEC and the Big Ten East, along with everything else that's going to play out with the Sooners and Bearcats. We'll be here with you. On behalf of Bryce Petty, Trevor Knight, Christian Hackenberg, I'm George Whitfield. See you next week, Field of 12, College Football After Dark.